Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Your Technologically Inept Foods Teacher. Here to talk to you today about making a fruit cocktail cake. Do you have a can of fruit cocktail, a can of crushed pineapple, a can of peaches, or a can of pears that's been sitting inside your pantry, very, very dusty, not knowing if anybody will ever eat it? Well, this recipe is super easy, very, very quick. It's also delicious. Doesn't create very many dishes, so it's all check marks in the life of a mom. And so I think this might be good for you guys too. So let's talk about it. So this is the recipe that we're doing. So a key thing is if you are using a bundt pan, you need to make sure you grease it really, really well. I'll talk to you about that in just a second. You can use any canned fruit you want. You might have to throw it in a blender or crush it up using a potato masher if you need to, and you just have to remember that this glaze that we're going to cook on the stove, which is really, really delicious, goes onto the cake when the cake is hot. That's super important because the cake is going to absorb this beautiful sweet glaze, and it's going to create a really moist, dense cake. Great for coffee, great for tea, great for anywhere that you're going, and won't break the bank. Okay, so a few things. So if you don't have a bundt pan, so we'll talk about those, you can use a muffin tin instead. You can use muffin liners. Use any 400 ml can of fruit that you have at home, and just make sure it's somewhat crushed or pureed. If it's fruit cocktail, can go straight in, or crushed pineapple, straight in is fine. Make sure you grease your bundt pan super well using Crisco, and bake until dark brown. And then of course the toothpick test is going to be the test that ensures that this is done and the glaze goes on hot. So those are all the main tips and tricks. So coming over here, I've got some different pans. So this is a silicone bundt pan. I prefer to use this one. You can see it's really pliable, it's flexible, and it's going to really help us to get the cake out of the pan at the end. That's why I like to use a silicone bundt pan. I also have a metal one. I mean, I use it too. Sometimes I find that even when I grease this really well, it still doesn't want to come out of the pan. And you could also use muffin tins lined with muffin liners, and then you could use a pastry brush to glaze the glaze on top of each of the muffins. So the idea is that you want the cake at the end of the day to absorb as much of the delicious glaze as we're using as possible. So today I had Del Monte cocktail and fruit juices, or packed in water, and that's what I use. Now for greasing, I like to use Crisco. Crisco is a all vegetable oil. It's a high temperature fat, great for greasing all pie plates and things, so it's something I keep in my house for greasing. If you don't have Crisco, you could always use margarine, you could use butter, you could use lard, whatever you have, but Crisco certainly is the best. Probably don't use Pam, that's not going to be a great option for this. Literally, for this cake, for the ingredients for the cake, you literally put all of the ingredients into a bowl. You mix it with a mixer until just combined, moist, and you put it in the pan and bake for the appropriate time, okay? And then we're going to toothpick test it. Okay, I'm going to pop that into a pan, put it into the oven, and then meanwhile I've got all of my glaze items in a pot. Once the cake is about 75% done, you're going to get that glaze cooking, and then the glaze is going to be warm, the cake is going to be warm, and you're going to brush it right on top. So I'll have an adjoining video of the baked cake that goes with this one, so make sure you see how everything goes. So you're going to need a pastry brush as well. Until next time, I'll see ya. Hi guys, I'm back here to show you what the finished products of my baked fruit cocktail cake is. I've got my silicone pan here. Now my silicone pan is so nice because it comes off so easily. It doesn't rip off the top of your cake. That's the reason I like to use silicone pans. As you can see, it's pretty dark golden brown, which is to be expected because this sugar, or this cake, has a ton of sugar in it, which is going to cause a lot of caramelization. Caramelization is browning due to the sugars in a food. So then what I've got going over here is the sauce. So the sauce is nice and cooked. Everything is in it, and basically, really carefully, I'm gonna pour it over my cake. Ooh. He's hot. You wanna go really slow, and the whole idea is that the cake is gonna absorb all of this buttery, sugary, delicious goodness. Now, this is a fast cake, it's easy, it's not expensive. If you want to bring this to somebody's house, sometimes people say it doesn't look that nice, but you know what? This cake is delicious. You just heat it up after it's cooled in the microwave and put it with some nice frozen vanilla yogurt. It's really good. Now, of course, as we're pouring it on, we want to try to hit as many spots on the outside because you want every bite of this cake to be as delicious as the next. So the idea is to get the cake to absorb as much of the sauce as possible. And if you just go slowly and do it in this method, then we'll have to use our pastry brush to force it in. Anything that doesn't go in, we'll use our pastry brush to force in the juices to keep this cake beautiful and moist, okay? So again, a cake super easy to make, doesn't require a lot of ingredients. Most people have these things in their house. You can use any canned fruit that you have. Now, if you have canned peaches or pears that are pretty big in size, you can totally use them, but I might cut up the pears or cut up the peaches into like a large dice size before you pour it in. Can of fruit cocktail, just go straight in. Crushed pineapple would be fine, even pineapple tidbits juice in. Now the can does need to be about 400 mils. So you see I'm just using my pastry brush to make sure that the cake absorbs all of the liquid, okay? Okay. All right, and yeah, this is it's such a good cake. This is an old school one. Now, as I said before, you don't have to use a bundt pan. You totally don't need any special pan. You can spoon this into muffin liners, and then you just put the glaze. You generally pour the glaze on top of the muffins, or use your pastry brush, brush it on top of each muffin so that it absorbs it. So same idea. Definitely the cooking time would be adjusted. So this cake, I baked it for 40 minutes, and that seemed to be pretty good. Toothpick test, toothpick comes out clean. Definitely for muffin, I'm thinking it's gonna take 15 to 20 minutes to bake, but definitely don't open that oven door before the 15-minute window, because 80% of the cooking time has to surpass before you can open the oven door for any cake, okay? So just make sure. Now, we've got a good looking cake. Check that out. Fruit cocktail cake. And your can of sad, lonely fruit cocktail has been used wisely, and your family will be happy. All right, till next time on another episode of Your Technologically Inept Foods Teacher. Take care, guys.